Hello and welcome back to anyone and everyone watching. Today it is time for the third episode of my Were They That Bad series, this time over Ryan Reed. Known by most as the driver of the Lilly Diabetes-sponsored Roush Fenway Racing Ford and as a two-time Xfinity Series winner at Daytona, Ryan enjoyed a longer career in NASCAR than most other drivers, competing to some extent from 2012 to 2021 in the sport's top 3 series. The whole time he was always a consistent and clean driver, and again on occasion he was a winner. But at the same time, he never performed at the high level that some of his peers did, and thus never made it full-time into the Cup Series. Coupling that with his lack of sponsorship in his later years in the sport, Ryan wasn't even able to make a full career in the lower divisions, like say a Justin Allgaier or a Matt Crafton. But today, let's take an in-depth look back at the entire stock car racing career of the once NASCAR Cup Series prospect and Roush development driver Ryan Reed to decide once and for all if he was really that bad. Hailing from Bakersfield, California, Ryan began his racing tenure at the relatively nearby and esteemed SoCal short track Irwindale Speedway. There, Ryan showed clear signs of talent, winning the 2009 Legends Division Championship and becoming the track's youngest super late model winner the next year. It was all looking up for the young Ryan until 2011 when he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and was even told by doctors that he would never be able to race again. Thankfully, that was a bit of an overreaction, as with the help of an in-car blood glucose monitor and drink systems, along with the ability to receive insulin shots during pit stops, Ryan was able to continue racing later that year with little to no disadvantages. In fact, it was that year in 2011 that he made his first starts in the then K&N Pro Series East, driving 3 times for his family-owned team. He finished no better than 16th in any of those races, but nonetheless they provided them the experience necessary to attract an offer from the ARCA powerhouse team venturing in motorsports come 2012. Now at 18 years old, Ryan was eligible to race at all the tracks in the NASCAR and ARCA circuits, including arguably the most prestigious of them all, and certainly the most important to his legacy, Daytona International Speedway. There in both his ARCA and Super Speedway debut, Ryan came home a solid 12th place out of the 43-car field. In a very clean race compared to the average Daytona season opener, only 3 drivers retired early due to crash damage, and there were only 5 caution flags throughout the afternoon. The winner that day was Bobby Gerhart behind the wheel of his own and signature number 5 Lucas Oil Chevrolet. Speaking of Daytona legends, there would be no other way to classify Gerhart, especially in the ARCA series, as out of his 9 career wins across 341 total starts, all but one of them came in the season-opening Daytona race. Not only that, but his 2012 win was his 3rd consecutive, matching his other 3-in-a-row streak from 2005 to 2007. As far as pure dominance at one track, that's one for the record books. And unfortunately, that would be the last time Bobby won at Daytona, or anywhere else for that matter, for the rest of his time in ARCA. I do find that interesting, though, that at the time one Daytona specialist won his last race, another one was making his first start at the track. Kind of like a very bootleg version of the whole Richard Petty and Jeff Gordon 1992 Cup Series finale at Atlanta. Anyway, for the rest of the season, Ryan struggled to run up front, only scoring 1 top 5 and 6 top 10s over the course of his 14-race schedule. For reference, his full-time teammate Brendan Poole won twice, scored 8 top 5s, 15 top 10s, and finished 3rd overall in the final standings. Also in 2012, Ryan was contacted by Waters Motorsports in a one-off deal to make his Truck Series debut at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. On paper, his 17th place finish in that race looks pretty good, but when considering that every driver 19th and back went behind the wall, and that he was one of only 2 finishing drivers not on the lead lap, his result suddenly becomes a lot less impressive. Still, given that that was his first race in the series, it was an achievement just to make it to the end. But Ryan was not the only driver in the field racing trucks for the first time, and he most definitely was not the most anticipated one, because finishing 2 spots ahead of him was none other than ThorSport Racing's newest addition, Travis Pastrana. Although the next season he only raced in 6 national stock car racing events, all of them came in the then nationwide series for the team he would end up spending the vast majority of his career at, Roush Fenway Racing. Up to this point, Ryan had still yet to prove himself in any big way, whether it be in the Truck Series, ARCA, or either the K&N Pro Series. But what he did have going for him was sponsorship. Being the lone NASCAR driver with type 1 diabetes, Ryan garnered the attention of American pharmaceutical company Eli Lilly and Company, who would agree to sponsor him in all of his racing endeavors from that point onward through their Drive to Stop Diabetes campaign. With their backing and Ryan's still acceptable results, Roush would have a hard time turning him down, and despite Ryan only scoring 1 top 10 in his 6 races with them that year, a P9 at the Fall Richmond race, it was announced that he'd be returning full-time for 2014. Following back-to-back nationwide championships with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in 2011 and 2012, and a lone win by Trevor Bayne in 2013, Roush was still more or less at the top of their game entering the 2014 season. And unlike in most years prior, the only Roush Nationwide Series drivers would be full-time series regulars, including of course the rookie Ryan Reed in the number 16, along with fellow rookie Chris Buescher in the 60, and 2011 Daytona 500 champion and the returning driver Trevor Bayne in the 6. Ryan got off to a rather slow and unpromising start that year, crashing out 3 times in the first 4 races. In the opener at Daytona, he ran middle of the pack all race long, and made it to the checkers in 18th before Dale Jr. got into the back of Kyle Larson on the cooldown lap and caused a big one at half speed. That caused Larson to go back up the track and hit the 12th place finishing Joe Nemechek, who then spun across the grass and came back up the track abruptly right into the path of Ryan Reed. Ryan, even having slowed down a good bit since the finish line, still made significant contact with the back of Nemechek, completely destroying the front end of his number 16 Mustang. The next week at Phoenix, after running about 15th all day long, Ryan crashed into the inside wall all by himself, coincidentally just as the caution was about to be thrown for rain. The rain had just come in, so most concluded the track was still too dry to cause the car to hook right like that, and that instead Ryan just ran out of talent. Luckily for him, as there were only 35 laps to go at the time of caution, the race was made official, and he only dropped back to finish in 22nd, 7 positions back from where he would have finished otherwise. At Las Vegas, Ryan was once again the 15th place car, qualifying and finishing there, before crashing out late once again the 4th race of the season at Bristol. This time, while running in 14th, he was battling to the inside of James Buescher before simply getting loose on corner exit and bouncing off the side of the 99 car into the inside wall, ending his race. Surprisingly, following the Bristol race, the rookie driver would finish every race under power for the rest of the season. However, the mediocrity of his average running and finishing positions remained unchanged. When it was all said and done, he came home a respectable 9th in the standings, but with only a single top 5, which is also his only top 10, and a slightly underwhelming average finish of 17.1. All the while, his teammates were regular contenders, with Bayne totaling 5 top 5s and 21 top 10s, and Chris Buescher totaling 5 top 5s and 14 top 10s, along with a win at Mid-Ohio. Despite coming close to top 10s multiple times, with 7 total 11th or 12th place finishes, the one race that Reed actually did finish there was at the second trip to Daytona. After qualifying a solid 4th place that day and keeping it inside the top 10 for most of the race, he kept his wits about him and brought it home right where he started, in part of a textbook clean photo finish between the winner of Casey Kane and runner-up Regan Smith. Also somewhere in that pack was the JGO Racing number 93 of Mike Wallace, who finished 10th, and the owner-driver Derek Hope in the 70 car, who finished 13th. That would be Derek's last time finishing inside the top half of the field for the rest of his racing career. Anyway, after his first full-time nationwide season, although Ryan had still not proven anything in regard to his chance at winning, he had proven that he could keep his car clean and give Roush consistent finishes week in and week out. That said, and with Eli Lilly and company still providing major backing, it was a no-brainer to bring Ryan back for his second season. The rest of Roush's 2015 lineup in the now Xfinity series included Chris Buescher returning to the 60, Elliott Sadler moving from Joe Gibbs Racing to the new number 1 car, and Bubba Wallace taking over the number 6 as Trevor Bayne moved up to the Cup Series full-time. At Daytona, qualifying went well for Reed as he went 8th on the boards, his best effort since the previous year's summer race, quite possibly a sign of good things to come. Similar to that race again, Ryan hovered right around the top 10 all afternoon, enjoying an all-green flag race up until lap 80 of 120, when an uncontrolled tire from Chris Cockram's car ventured in from his pit box into the infield grass. When the race restarted, Ryan was lined up in 4th, right behind Regan Smith on the outside line, but after Regan immediately dropped below to lead the inside lane in front of his teammate Chase Elliott, Ryan was left in full command of the outside. Within a few laps, Ryan was side-by-side with Regan for the lead, and with the help of Brad Keselowski and Eric Jones behind him, he would pull clear ahead of the inside line with 30 to go. Just 2 laps later, with Ryan still in the lead, the rookie Joe Gibbs Racing driver Daniel Suarez got out of control loose following a push from Kyle Larson, and came down across the whole pack, sending multiple cars wrecking, including Regan Smith. Smith had led 15 laps that day before he went airborne and flipped end over end when Suarez T-boned his right rear quarter panel. Oh yeah, and then this happened under the red flag.
Right there, on the back of the screen, Austin pulls up to stop. Yellow car doesn't. That's Mike Wallace in the 26, and he clobbers Dillon.
That was crazy. I watched a flip in front of me, made it down pit road clean, got to the backstretch, and I was going to come up here to the side of the 42 because we worked pretty good together right there. See if I could get anything out to him, but I was sitting there and I looked in my mirror and, oh my gosh, that scared the crap out of me.
The race restarted with 21 to go, and while Ryan held on to the lead initially, he eventually dropped back behind the likes of Brad Keselowski, Ty Dillon, and Chris Buescher. The lead pack continued to stay side by side all the way back to the tail end until with 9 laps to go, just as Michael Waltrip in the broadcast booth commented that the racing was getting too aggressive to maintain. Eric Jones would get a bad push from Kyle Busch on the inside line, and upon overcorrecting it came back up in front of the whole field, totaling numerous cars and sending Busch gliding at breakneck speeds into the infield wall. Busch's collision would of course lead to a broken leg and fractured foot that prevented him from competing in the next 11 races, but with the extent of his injuries unbeknownst to anyone else at the time, the race restarted as normal with Keselowski leading and Ryan Reed to his outside. At that point, with only 5 laps remaining, there were only 10 cars left on the lead lap and a few other lapped and or damaged cars making up the rest of the pack. The next lap, it looked like Reed's shot of the win might have already gone out the door, as he was left hanging on the far outside line and soon fell all the way back to the 4th row. But just after crossing the line with a white flag waving, Eric Almirola gave too big of a push to Kyle Larson in the outside lane, causing Larson to hook a sharp left and take out the number 4 car of Ross Chastain to his inside. Fortunately, everyone else stayed clear of the 2 spinning cars and the race stayed green. Then with Chastain out of the way, a path to the front had finally reopened for Reed, who was now receiving a big push from his teammate Buescher, and quickly was running down Brad Keselowski, as Brad had pulled out way too far ahead of the pack all by himself. With his momentum, Ryan executed a perfect pass to the inside of Keselowski on the entrance of Turn 3, and with only 5 cars left on the lead pack, no one had enough time to build up another run. At the line, it was Ryan Reed crossing first to score his first career win on the biggest stage in NASCAR, and in the process snapping Ford's horrific Daytona winless streak in the series, stretching back to 2004, and giving Roush Fenway Racing their first ever Xfinity win there. After that career-defining race, Ryan quickly resumed where he left off the year prior, running around 10th to 20th every race, but never any better. And despite his teammate Chris Buescher, who was also only in his sophomore Xfinity Series season, going on to win the championship with 2 race wins, 11 top 5s, and 20 top 10s, Ryan never finished better than 11th for the rest of the season. Yeah, that's right, his only top 10 in the 2015 season came via his win at Daytona. Even Bubba Wallace, as a rookie that year, posted 14 top 10, so I have a hard time believing there was any significant difference in equipment within the Roush stable. But just like in 2014, Ryan was at least consistently mediocre, still holding an average finish of 16.8 and only failing to finish 1 race all season long. By no means was he even meeting expectations at this point results-wise, but with his continued support from Eli Lilly and company, he was set to drive this 16 car full-time yet again for 2016. At first, it looked like Ryan was heading for a 3rd straight season of overall underachievement, as up until the summer Daytona race, the 15th race on the schedule, his top 10 curse carried on, only having finished the best of 11th at both Richmond and Iowa. Even at Daytona, Ryan was not a contender for the win at any point in the race, only running around the middle of the pack all day long, and taking advantage of half the pack wrecking on the final lap to cross the line in 6th. Regardless, either that race or something around that point this season was a turning point for Ryan. As with the first top 10 under his belt since his win in the prior year's season opener, he finally started picking them up on a somewhat regular basis. Throughout the second half of the season, he went on to score 6 more top 10s, including a very impressive 5th place at Road America. But considering he ran around 10th for most of that race, I would argue his most impressive full race performance that season came in the penultimate race at Phoenix, where after qualifying a career-high 3rd, he stayed well within the top 10 all day in a field featuring Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and would bring it home in 6th place. At that point, he was still in the playoffs, but as he needed nothing less than a miracle to advance to the championship 4, he still came up 7 points short of the cut line. Still, his late-season charge was well rewarded with a 6th place finish in the final standings, beating out his teammate Bubba Wallace, as well as Chip Ganassi Racing's Brendan Poole and Richard Childress Racing's Brandon Jones and Brendan Gaughan. Overall, 2016 was a year that marked a major improvement for Ryan Reed, not only in his ability to contend for top 10s on a much more regular basis, but also in his ability to perform when it counted in the playoffs. He was still not full-time Cup ready by any stretch, but nevertheless, Jack Roush decided to field a 4th entry for him in that year's Fall Talladega race. In his Cup debut, Ryan brought back his number 99 car to a respectable 26th place finish when taking into account that all but 3 cars finished that race under power. Also, might I add that Brian Scott finished 2nd that day. Anyway, given all that, Ryan was riding some serious momentum into 2017, and though he still had a lot to prove, he very well could have been on his way to do it. Back again at Daytona, the track he'd won at 2 years ago now, Ryan kicked off the season with a second-place qualifying effort, just edging out his grid spot in last year's Fall Phoenix race to become his new personal best. But this go-around, Ryan would not make it to the finish without his fair share of setbacks, as first, on just lap 23, he went spinning through the backstretch grass in avoidance of the early big one. If luck wasn't on his side, the grass could have easily torn his splitter clean off and ended his day right then and there, but fortunately he received no major damage, and with the assistance of another large crash taking out lots of big names, he was able to make it back up to 4th place for the start of the second stage. Opposite to the first stage, the second stage was incident-free all the way through until the final lap when Brennan Poole lost control on the inside line and hooked up the track, crashing into colleague racing number 11 of Blake Koch. With significant right front damage, Poole would be done for the day, while Koch would continue on with salvageable damage. Meanwhile, the whole stage, Ryan Reed maintained his position and would score 7 points for his 4th place finish. In the final stage, he continued to hold it down inside the top 5, and while riding in second with 30 laps to go, he moved to the inside of the leader Austin Dillon entering turn 1, getting Dillon loose and taking over the lead. But his lead vanished just about as quickly as it came, as he pulled out too far ahead of the pack and was swallowed up through the middle in the front stretch. Luckily, he found a gap on the outside lane and slid into the 8th position rather than falling all the way to the tail end. That luck would last until the 17 to go mark, as it was then that Ryan would go spinning through the grass for a second time that evening, this time after getting tagged by an out-of-control Elliott Sadler. Sadler, who was the second car on the outside line, got loose off a push from Austin Dillon and turned hard right into the outside wall before coming down across the track into Reed and others, triggering the third big one of the race. Like his first spin, Ryan didn't pick up any major damage, but would still have to restart towards the rear with only 11 laps remaining, likely putting him out of contention. Or would it? Actually, I'll just let you guys watch the restart.
If I had to have a guy that might have something to say about what we just said, it's the dude that just peeked to the outside and made him 3 wide. That's Austin Dillon. We know how lightning fast that car is, but what a handful. Can he get up there and mix it up?
The only question with the 2 car that I have is, does he have like really new tires or new tires from the beginning of the race that he spun out on? What did they put on for tires? But whatever it is, if that car handles any better, it's really fast.
Well, he went to 6th to 3rd on a restart there by himself in the outside lane.
No help from behind though, Adam. You can see that's Harrison Rhodes behind him, and he can't get up to the bumper of the 2 car.
What about those tires, Matt?
5 to 6 lap scuffs. They took off earlier in the race, so put a heat cycle on them. And it's looking good so far. Remember, they made that adjustment, though, to try to tighten him up because he was so free.
You see that veteran move there by Brendan Gaughan? He had a bit of a run. He went ahead and poked his nose to the outside. He knew he would have Austin Dillon behind him. Others have joined Gaughan. Now he says, I'll go to the bottom if I can't get to the top.
All right, it's 7 o'clock in the East, and if you've tuned in to FS1 for Monster Energy Supercross from Atlanta, coverage begins on FS2, and as soon as we're done here at Daytona, you can watch.
Yeah, in under 2 laps, Ryan went from 16th to 3rd. And by no means was he done yet, as with 9 to go, he would take the lead again with a perfectly timed move to the inside of Casey Kane. Kane took it back a few laps later with a power prevailing on the outside line, but with both the Dillon brothers organizing a move to his outside, he would fall through the middle, putting Ryan Reed back out front of the pack. Leading the single-file pack with just 3 laps to go, Ryan was in the best seat in the house, but like at any superspeedway race, a late race caution can be nearly counted on. That came when Ray Black Jr. tried to squeeze into too tight of a hole in the backstretch and went spinning into the grass along with rookie junior motorsports driver William Byron. Neither driver collected any noteworthy damage, and both were able to continue on to the overtime restart. On the restart, Reed made the right call to choose the outside because the second driver on the inside line, Ty Dillon, immediately ran out of fuel and couldn't get up to speed, which completely disorganized the whole line. Reed and Austin Dillon quickly pulled out ahead of the rest of the pack and were uncontested until the final lap when Casey Kane and a handful of others finally closed the distance. Kane had enough momentum to sort of the inside of Austin Dillon, but nowhere near enough to get the inside of Reed. Then, thanks to an incredible block through turns 1 and 2, Reed held a straight and came out of turn 4 already the winner, as Kane himself had pulled out too far ahead of the remaining pack to materialize another run. And it was Ryan Reed who had won the season opener at Daytona for the second time in the past 3 years. Multiple underdogs made up the top 10 that night, including JGL Racing's Scott Lagasse Jr. in 6th, Jimmy Means Racing's Joey Gaze in 7th, and JD Motorsports' Garrett Smithley and Harrison Rose coming in 8th and 10th respectively. Even 18-year-old Brandon Hightower, driving for MBM Motorsports, was able to cross the line 13th, the best he would ever finish in a short stint in NASCAR. Anyway, the rest of the 2017 season showed mixed results for Ryan Reed. For one, he continued to bid for top 10 finishes all season long, coming up with 6 more, including a P5 at Dover. But on the other hand, he began wrecking a lot more. Up until this point, the most DNFs he had posted in a single season was 2, both in 2014 and 2016, but in 2017 he crashed out of 6 races and went behind the wall with overheating problems in another. Sure, 2 of those were super speedways, but he also had a miserable streak of 3 crashes in a row between the Mid-Ohio and Road America races. Then in the playoffs, he at least made it to the finish of all 7 races, but was in no way a threat, only coming up with the best playoff race finish of 10th at Kentucky and Kansas. He once again squeaked into the round of 8, but finished the furthest from the cut line out of all the 4 drivers who failed to qualify for the championship, and ended up the year 8th overall. Not too bad on paper, but for a 4th-year guy in Roush equipment, he simply wasn't cutting it. Being a super speedway specialist can sometimes get you by in the Cup Series with a smaller team, but the same cannot be said for a driver in the Xfinity Series when they're quite literally never in contention to win any other races. Still, with Eli Lilly and company back on board for a 5th full-time season, Reed would get one last chance in 2018 to make some much-needed improvement on the short tracks and mile-and-a-halves, and if not, hopefully at least get involved in fewer crashes than the previous year. But spoiler alert, neither of those things would happen. Ryan started off the year with yet another excellent run at Daytona, this time coming up just short in 3rd, but other than his 3 laps led there, he would only lead 2 more laps over the rest of the season. Still, the 13th round at Michigan that year was the closest he'd ever come to breaking through to track other than Daytona, as there, after starting back in 15th, his car came alive right away and he stayed up in the top 5 all race along, finishing 3rd in the first 2 stages, and coming home 4th. If he could have put together runs like that more often, there's a good chance he could have stayed in the sport, even without ever being a championship threat. But instead he continued on averaging 15th place finishes right after that, and showing little to no improvement compared to his earlier years. In the end, Ryan did score career-high top 10s in 2018 with 10 total, including his aforementioned 2 top 5s, but he also posted 5 DNFs due to crashes, 1 fewer than in 2017, but still far from the clean record he had in his first 3 seasons. Another unfortunate trend that carried on into 2018 was his worsening playoff performances. That year, not only did he fail to qualify for the round of 8 for the first time, but following the cutoff race at Dover, he was the lowest of all 12 playoff drivers in points. At season's end, Reed was 11th overall, his worst points finish out of all of his 5 full-time seasons, and rather embarrassingly, he finished 1 spot behind JD Motorsports' Ross Chastain. Granted, Chastain did drive for Chip Ganassi in 3 races that season, but only one of those was a playoff race. With all that said, it was no wonder why Eli Lilly and company pulled their sponsorship following the 2018 season. After 5 seasons of top equipment and no significant signs of improvement, there was simply no future for Ryan in NASCAR. Also, with Eli Lilly being Ryan's only sponsor and Roush's biggest Xfinity Series backer, Ryan was not only without a ride for the upcoming season, but the entire Roush Xfinity program would close their doors. Not to mention that Roush's infamous number 60 car that season was crashing out on a near weekly basis. Regardless, in 2019, the only time Ryan competed in the top 3 divisions of NASCAR was in the spring Las Vegas Truck Series race. There, in a one-off deal with David Gilliland's team, Ryan brought home a respectable P9, but nevertheless was not given a single other opportunity for the next 2 years. Then, finally in 2021, he tried to make a comeback with the struggling Truck Series team CMI Motorsports, which went just about as expected. In his 2 races with them, he finished in 29th, 5 laps off the pace of Richmond, and then dead last the following race at Kansas after steering problems put him behind the wall early on. Due to his newfound relevance at the time, he was given one last opportunity that year by GMS Racing when the planned full-time driver of their number 24 truck, Rafael Assard, ran out of funding. Scheduled to fail in the next race at Darlington, Reed once again failed to make the most of it, ending the day at 12th. So, was Ryan Reed that bad? In this case, I would have to say yes, because I think he is pretty well rated amongst NASCAR fans today. He's not overly criticized, nor is he overly complimented. He also meets the qualifications of a NASCAR bust in just about every way. He drove for a big team, he had early hype from his 2015 Daytona win, and he just never did anything noteworthy, well, besides win again at Daytona. But is Ryan objectively a bad driver? Absolutely not. He got slightly more wreck-prone in his final 2 Xfinity seasons, but overall he took good care of his equipment and to this day could be a serviceable driver for any small truck or Xfinity Series team. The only reason why he's out of racing entirely is because he doesn't bring funding anymore, not because he tore up too many cars or is posting straight up bad results. His career in the Xfinity Series was the definition of mediocre, so while he has no place in the Cup Series, again, if he ever gets the funding in the future, which I seriously doubt he will, he absolutely deserves a spot in trucks or Xfinity with whatever he can get. And no matter what his future in racing is, Ryan Reed will always go down as a 2-time Daytona winner in the Xfinity Series, a feat that not too many other drivers can claim. But that's all for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos just like these. Also, I'd love to read down in the comments which drivers you guys want me to make an episode on next. For my next video and possibly a new series, I was thinking about making full videos on the best races for small teams. So, for example, the best ever race for Rick Ware Racing or MBM Motorsports, basically just tracking the team's progress throughout the entire race. So let me know what you guys think about that one as well. But yeah, that's all I've got to say for today. So until next time, peace out.